Hello, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. I am Kevin Lieber. With me, not today, is Matthew Tabor because he is under the weather. I don't know exactly what's going on with him, but hopefully he has a speedy and full recovery uh, quickly. Uh, so it's you're stuck with me today, folks, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to talk to you about this terrible idea that I had, which was to write a book. Not one of my brightest ideas, but I wanted to get into a little bit about why why it's dumb, why I like that it's dumb, some things that I've learned along the way, and also maybe some things that could help you, but then also ultimately maybe nothing will help you. That's ominous. The reason that I say maybe nothing will help you is that I was thinking earlier today that I've watched a lot of YouTube videos. I've actually read a whole bunch of books on writing books, and I realized that much of the advice that I have received has not been helpful at all, and in some instances has been I don't want to say harmful because I could just ignore it. But, certainly would characterize it as the opposite of what I have found useful. So for example, today, because I'm watching all of these videos, they get served to me in my algorithm, and one came up today on YouTube that, gosh, what was the title? It was, of course, it was some, like, wonderfully clickbaity thing like, "The biggest secret to writing a great novel." Like, of course. If I watch this 6-minute video, then it'll all be clear. I'll have exactly the information that I need to write a great novel. So I click on it and I watch it. And about 2 minutes in, I disagreed with it entirely. I will say that one of the things that I learned really early on, and I'll preface what the big secret was with this information, which is that everybody's, and this is like such a bland kind of generic thing to say, and maybe it applies to all creative endeavors, but maybe not. And that is just that like everybody's process is different. And and I will say that like books are extremely different. Like the way that people write is extremely different from author to author. That's why some people fall in love with a particular author's style. But even like the narrative structure, and I'm talking about fiction. Let's make that clear that I'm talking about fiction. I'm not talking about, like even, I don't know, historical books or which is what I'm sure a lot of people, or philosophy books. I'm sure a lot of people read those types of books. I'm mostly interested in fiction right now because that's what I'm writing. So that's all I've been reading, mostly in the fantasy genre because Sleep Warrior is fantasy genre ish. It's probably more fantasy genre than it is anything else. So, and since you kind of really have to pick a lane so that your audience knows what they're getting into, then that's the lane certainly that I think that I would pick for Sleep Warrior. So anyway, the fact is when it comes to writing a book, it's all like very particular. Like here's another example. I might have mentioned this on a previous podcast about writing, but I found it interesting early on, learning that Orson Scott Card, who wrote Ender's Game, uh, is like a strict outliner. Apparently, like he outlines everything, and but then conversely, Stephen King outlines nothing to the point where he considers outlining like the death of writing a story. Like he is like extremely against outlining. He is a full time, what they apparently call a pantser, So writing by the seat of your pants. Stephen King is a full-time pantser. He just, sits down, starts writing, and then eventually stops. He's not working on outlines. And I'll get into what my process has been when it comes to outlining and pantsing and all of that a little bit later. But the top secret thing that I must tell you that will make you a great writer has to do, according to this video that I watched today that I disagreed with, had to do with um, essentially when you get stuck in your story to just write, come back to this later, essentially. Um, you know, or write something cool happens here. Okay, this is his advice. All right, is that if you're not quite sure what happens, see, and this is something that I call. I'm sure there is a real uh, like industry term for this. Maybe people just use writer's block. I don't like writer's block. We did a whole podcast about writer's block. Um, I like to call it story stump, when you're stumped on your story and you're kind of stuck. Listen to how alliterative that was. It's great. Well, according to this guy, if you stumble into story stump, then what you do is you just kind of put some sort of placeholder in there that lets you know you have to come back to it later, and then you just keep going. Okay, according to this guy, it's like don't stop because you don't want to lose your momentum as a writer. Instead, just uh, write like lorem ipsum factum or whatever. Write something in that spot, and then uh, skip it. That's basically what the advice was. Was like if you're stuck, then skip that part and keep going elsewhere. Now, here's why that I don't see how that would work for me. Obviously, it works for this guy, and you know, as a result, I'm sure that it would also work for many, 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 many other people. I think a lot of this, the reason it's difficult to give blanket advice on writing stuff is because of what I said earlier, which is that everybody's writing like wildly different things. Like you could be, like, for example, right now I am reading Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, The Way of Kings, first book. And there are multiple POV characters. Well, if you have like, meaning like, and Game of Thrones is, or, Song of Fire and Ice is like this, where, a chapter is about one character and then another chapter is about another character. I could totally see this advice working in that type of storytelling because you can just, I'm not sure what's going on with Arya. Let me just do a signpost, and now I can hop over to Jon Snow, and then I'll come back to what Arya's problem is later. I'll just dive into some Jon Snow stuff for a little while and keep my momentum going. Perfectly sound advice. That does not work at all for Sleep Warrior because the way that story works is like every single thing leads directly into the next thing to like a direct degree in such a way that like if I don't solve problem 17, I have no idea what's problem 18, 19, 20, and 21 are going to be. Like I don't know what comes after that because it's all dependent on solving this one thing, which is another thing I would want to talk to you about is how much my writing has slowed and why it has slowed as I have gotten into uh, really the conclusion ish side, end of the second act to the third act ish, I think. Wow, it has slowed down a lot because of this reason. Because if I am in Story Stump Town, that freaking hurdle has got to be cleared or I'm dead in the water. Like there's no I can't just start writing about Jon Snow, is my point. So uh this piece of writing advice to me was not helpful. There's just not a way for me to come back to a thing later, because now I'm writing all of this other stuff. And how is that tying into the thing that I didn't solve to begin with? Like, none of that would work for me. And I'm sure there are a million examples of different pieces of writing advice that sound great to some writers of some stories, and to other people are like, how could I do that? So, um, my process has been really all over the place because uh, the basic premise of Sleep Warrior involves a guy having his first dream, and then every time he falls asleep, he wakes up in the other world. So when he falls asleep in the real world, he wakes up in his dream world. And then when he falls asleep in the dream world, he wakes back up in the real world. So he's constantly going back and forth between these two worlds. So if something is happening in one world, there has to be a direct relation to some kind of challenge in the other one, and vice versa. It is this ping pong game that's being played. Um, and basically, it's playing narrative ping pong. So that's why that advice is, because I if one if the ping is going this way, I need to know where the pong is coming from the other side, or else game, set, match. I guess I'll just lose. So I've gone through a number of iterations of like how to figure all of this out. I initially started years ago outlining on note cards. That was something that I had read was a good way to do um, outlining, for a couple of reasons. One is that it's not on the computer. So you're getting away from the computer. You're writing by hand on note cards. And, um, if you don't like what this note card says anymore, you just throw it away and replace it. So if, like, you know, scene or chapter 14 or whatever doesn't make sense anymore, well, you just throw that note card away and then start a fresh one that's chapter 14, and then there you go, and you just slot it in. It's helpful. It's helpful for both of those reasons. It's helpful to get away from a computer so you're not distracted by the internet, and it's also useful to be able to kind of lay out your different chapters in front of you and see how they're all working. Um, After I did all of that, I then transferred that to a computer. I use a writing program called Scrivener that's made for manuscripts, which just kind of keeps things organized in a way that I have found pretty useful. But I should tell you that I have changed that outline. Like, I have started over almost, not completely, because I have, as I'm writing, I don't start over completely. But I have gotten to a point where once I start actually pantsing, oh, Jen in the chat says pantser or gardener. So once I also, I guess you could say, start gardening, well, things change. Like, things have changed to the point where now I have to alter my outline. Now I'm like, actually, because I did a thing that I didn't expect to do that worked better in the story. As I was actually pantsing, I was actually writing the chapter. I'm like, oh, actually, this would work better. Well, now that screwed up what I had planned uh, for the next chapter after that, which screws up everything after that. So, like, it is this domino effect where, yes, one domino, is now falling in a different direction, and I have to put more dominoes over there now, so that we have a continuous flow of dominoes. So I have outlined the whole thing probably 5 times now, probably 5 times, and I probably will end up doing it. I don't know how many more times. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Oh, we'll see. Because this second half of this writing is going much more tediously than the first half, and here's why. Let me explain to you my newfound perspective on storytelling and writing. I have found, I have found, I don't know how other people feel about this. I have found that starting a story is pretty fun and easy, like because it's frictionless. You can write anything. You come up with your characters and you come up with fun scenarios of how to introduce them, what a general conflict would be. You can do fun little conflicts between characters that have like kind of lower stakes that just sort of show them in their world and maybe will have an impact, and should have some impact later in the story. But for now, you're just playing, right? You're just in a fresh, clean sandbox and you can make any type of sandcastle, build whatever that you want. Build a moat, build a little tower over here. Um, Here's a volcano. You can just play in your sandbox. Well, if you want to create a story that has a um, ideally satisfying conclusion, of course, with the appropriate ramp up and everything before reaching that conclusion, and then, of course, some sort of resolution on the other side of that, playtime is kind of over. You're no longer just in this like magical world building, story building, character building, fun sandbox. Now you're in kind of a sandbox that's finished, sort of. Like all the pieces are in play, and you're not really sure how to move them in a compelling way. Another way I thought about it is like, and as you're beginning your story and you're getting towards, I think probably the second act, maybe the inciting event, maybe it, no, because in books, really the inciting event really needs to happen like right away. You do have some like kind of major change at the end of Act One, whatever. And you don't really have to have any of that stuff, actually. That's what's pretty interesting about writing a book. You don't have to follow like any hero's journey ish story wheels or anything like that. You don't have to do that. But anyway, the thing is that it's a I've noticed so before I started reading Stormlight, I went through all of Patrick Rothfuss stuff. So the King Killer Chronicles, there's 2 books. There's supposed to be a third. Nobody knows if that will ever happen. Here's part of what I think is the problem with the third one. And maybe this is too like inside baseball and boring to people who aren't familiar with this series, but I will try to explain how it connects to what I'm talking about. So the first 2 books are that were published and are quite popular are The Name of the Wind and The Wise Man's Fear. Why? Well, people love these books because of the prose. The way that they're written, it is just like silky, smooth, rhythmic, melodic. It's just like creamy, buttery prose. And I can't really tell you what that means unless you read it and you understand what I'm saying. But it is pleasurable to read, in my opinion, and many other people's opinion as well. The problem is that it is all the stuff that I'm talking about. It's all like playing in the sandbox. It's all world building. It's all like fun little vignettes and little scenes of, and you get to know a new character. And oh, this character's name is Puppet, and there's all these puppets, and he lives in these archives, and he has candles, and you're not allowed to have candles, but why does he have candles? And it's all like it's like 2,000 pages of that of setup, basically. Okay, it's like 2,000 pages of a really, really, really fun setup. Now, in order to conclude that, it is a monumental, like unbelievable task in order to turn that into like a satisfying conclusion of a story. Because clearly, and since those two books, he's written a couple of side books that are more, it's more playtime. Like he just picks a character in the world. One is named Ori, who's this girl who kind of lives underneath this university, and she is strange, and you get to spend, kind of a week in her life and just see what her life is like. And that's a little book that he wrote, little side story. Another one is another little side adventure about this guy Bast, who is from the Fey realm, and what does he do all day? Well, he talks to children, and he makes deals with them, and he kind of manipulates the small town, and whatever. It's more playtime. He's just playing in sandboxes, and he's amazing at it, and it's clearly what he wants to do. And people have been waiting now, I think, 15 years for him to finish the book, for him to write the third one. And crickets, man, like crickets on this third book. And in my opinion, it's because of this problem that I'm talking about, which is like, it is super fun as like a capital C creative person to just make stuff up. And it is really hard, I think, to be that because these are kind of different skills. I think this is my theory. So here's my I don't know if anybody agrees with this or not, but my theory is that it's one skill to like come up with all of these things and to be able to write it in a way that's like enjoyable to read. It's another skill to conclude it, to like put all the puzzle pieces. And one thing that this is how I would describe it. On one hand, you're inventing puzzle pieces, okay? And this is what I think Patrick Rothfuss amazing at inventing puzzle pieces. Then you have to stick them together somehow. You have to connect the puzzle pieces. And that, I think, is just a really different task. I think it's a different skill, and I think it's a different talent to stick them together. And I do wonder, this is just pure conjecture, if perhaps this is part of George R.R. Martin's problems with concluding A Song of Fire and Ice. Like, why is that not done? That guy is incredibly prolific. You know that he is. He could write endlessly, but can't finish the story. And this is my theory about that. Why? It's because it's just way harder to finish a story than it is to start one, basically. And in my opinion, starting one can be classified, under an umbrella that is multiple books long and thousands of pages long. I don't mean starting a story like the first 3 chapters. In my the way that, in the context in which I'm talking about it, I think you could start a story that is, 5 books and however many thousands of pages and like millions of words. The Game of Thrones story is. So that is something that I have come to realize. So yes, so when I began last year, about a year ago now, writing Sleep Warrior, I was writing a chapter. I don't know, every 10 days. Um, I would say a chapter a week, between a week and 2 weeks. Like, let's call it that. But at the beginning, it was probably pretty close to a chapter a week. Now I am writing a chapter a month ish. I would have to look. It might be worse than that. It might be slower. It might be like a chapter every 5 weeks or something like that. Because I'm at a point where I'm no longer building sandcastles. The sandcastles are there. I'm trying to figure out how to how to utilize them, how to utilize my sandcastle, how to connect the puzzle pieces that I invented in the like last year, how to put them together. There are several other things that I wanted to let you know about what I have written or what I have learned about writing. One of so another one has a lot to do with uh, not process, but like your schedule. Oh man, you will read all kinds or hear all kinds of different advice on what you need to do to, you know, be a writer is to have a specific schedule and you need to write 1,500 words a day, or you need to write 1,000 words a day, or you need to write 50 words a day. That's okay too, whatever it is. Or you need to, carve out 3 hours in the morning when you first wake up. And, that's when you get the bulk of your writing done, or whatever it is. Many, 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 many different sort of schedules that people will tell you. I have recognized that for myself, for me, it is it's like the worst, pretty much the worst thing imaginable in order for me to be productive with writing is that I have to have nothing else to do that day. The whole day, and including the night, the morning, noon, night, nothing. Not uh, an appointment, not a meeting, not a lunch with a friend, not some kind of pressing uh, chore or like anything. It's really, really, it's not helpful at all. It's really not helpful. I absolutely wish that I could say, you know what? After dinner every day, I'm going to sit down at the computer for 3 hours and write. That sounds amazing. Uh, or, I'm going to set my alarm. I'm going to change my schedule so that I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I heard this from one of the authors I watched a podcast about. This is what he does: is he wakes up at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, spends like 3 or 4 hours writing, and essentially he said if he doesn't get a decent chunk of writing done by 9 a.m., the day is a wash. Like he's not, it's over. He's not going to write anything. Make any meaningful progress, we'll say, if that doesn't happen. So that has been really hard for me to navigate because there's always like something to do. I think, part of it for me has been uh, making sure that I set myself up to have these free and clear writing days. I had to be like really conscientious of that and intentional to say like, okay, if I do like these 7 things today that I don't have to do today. Like it's like say today is Tuesday. Let's say I could potentially have a free writing day tomorrow, Wednesday, if I get X, Y, and Z done today. Now, if I don't get X, Y, and Z done today, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. I could do it tomorrow. Like there's no deadline. But I have to create like a self-imposed artificial deadline on myself to get more done so that I have a free writing day, or else I just don't get any writing done. Compared to like Sunday of this past week, completely free day, wrote over 1,000 words and made progress. Like, oh, sweet. I had been stuck. And also, this is important thing that I learned is that all of this progress is gauged on word count. It's not something I would have realized before I started writing, but it's all about word count. That's how you're measuring, which is not like an arbitrary thing. Like depending upon what genre you're in and the age demographic that you're writing for, like word count is extremely important. So, for instance, like YA novels need to be somewhere, I think, in the range of like 70,000 to like 100,000 at the very high end words. Anything, I'm pretty sure anything past like 100,000 words, you're like, it's too long. It's too long. Unless you're, established and you can get away with it, like what happened with the Harry Potter series. With that started out like bang on. The first Harry Potter book is 77,000 words. Bang on in the word count range for YA. And then, by book 3, I think it was, those things just started like ballooning into tomes because, people were longing for that and they wanted to read more and more and more about the world of Harry Potter. So that's extreme outlier. Extreme outlier. Anyway, I have 80,000 words right now. So, like in the realm of a YA book, like I should be wrapping this thing up. It's not a YA book though. So I don't have to worry about like, oh my gosh, like how do I tie up all of these loose ends in the next 4 chapters? But to give you some perspective on like how long an 80,000 word book is, I already mentioned the first Harry Potter is 77,000 words. The Great Gatsby, 46,000 words. So that's a pretty short book. Um, Hunger Games is 98,000. The Hobbit is 100,000. The Shining is 168,000. Fellowship of the Ring, 202,000. And A Game of Thrones is 340,000. So you could see like the variance is pretty crazy between something like The Great Gatsby and Game of Thrones. All of this, comes down to who your audience, who you're writing for, and sort of what they expect, what they enjoy. When it comes to fantasy readers, you'd notice a lot of fantasy books are pretty long because perhaps like the major function and selling point, I say perhaps because I'm not sure, but perhaps is the world building. Like, not that that's the most important thing because, world building is not going to carry a reader for 300,000 words. Like, it has to have great characters and it ultimately has to be an interesting story. But I have noticed that, like, a tremendous amount of what people talk about when they talk about their favorite fantasy novels are things like, the magic system and the monsters or the otherworldly aspects of it, the world building stuff. Or the politics, like Game of Thrones is like obviously like largely about the politics of all of the different people involved. So when it comes to actually writing, the other thing that I wanted to mention that has worked for me in terms of like how to think of writing a chapter. So I only focus on one chapter at a time. Like I said earlier, there are other people, I'm sure it works for them to hop around. I can't hop around. There's no hopping for me. So writing, one chapter at a time. One piece of advice that I loved when I watched Brandon Sanderson has a free college course on writing sci-fi and fantasy on YouTube. You can just watch. It's great. There was a piece, or there was a quote. I cannot remember who to attribute it to. It's not Sanderson. He got the quote from somebody else. And so, whoever it was said to Sanderson to make sure that every chapter in the book could potentially be some reader's favorite. That was like a little epiphany to hear for me. I wouldn't have thought of it that way, and I didn't think of it that way. Of course, I only thought of each chapter obviously being compelling, but more or less as being some sort of cog in like the forward engine of the entire book. Like I need this like components in a car, I guess. Like I need some wheels and then I need an axle and here's an engine. Put some pistons in that engine. Where does the gas tank go? I guess that's kind of like mostly how I thought of it. I didn't think of it as no, 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 no. There should be some reason that each chapter in the whole book is someone's favorite. If if there's if you write a chapter that can't possibly be anybody's favorite in the book, maybe it's not very good. Maybe you should improve that chapter because I don't know. Maybe it doesn't have to be that way. Of course, it doesn't. There really are no like hard and fast, strict rules when it comes to writing a novel, but that was certainly something that stood out to me that I wanted to share with you that I found useful. Like that was a piece of advice. I was like, oh, okay, that's really useful, and it has changed how I've thought about the chapters, and also maybe has been another reason for the slowing down of writing them. Is that you know I'll look at my outline. I'm like, okay, I have to get from here to here. I start writing how to get from here to here, and then I step back and I'm like, this isn't enough. This is missing something. Why would this chapter be anyone's favorite? There's no reason. I need to come up with a reason that someone in the world reads this one and says that, you know, resonated with me more than anything else. So that probably has been another reason for the slowdown. What's weird to talk about the slowdown is like you have no idea. Like nobody, the only person in the world, really, a couple of people in the world who I've been sending the chapters to are the only ones that know that the flow has been tampered. You guys have no idea. For all you know, there's not even a book. This is just me wasting your time and mine on a podcast about a thing that doesn't even exist. I wouldn't do that though. Of course it exists. And all of the things that I'm saying, I'm hopeful if there's one person who's thinking about writing or has written that finds this useful, and obviously this is just for novels because they're so long and it has to have so many ideas. It's really different than writing a YouTube video. One reason I was thinking about this earlier today. I don't have anything against I don't have anything maybe I won't even say this. I'll say it. Okay. I think a lot of what ends up being in nonfiction books, maybe it's kind of like a scientific research paper, actually. Sorry. Now you're seeing what it's like when I am arguing with myself in my head. Usually I've settled arguments before I start a podcast, and I try not to start them while I'm recording. But what I was going to say is that I would rather make a YouTube video on a nonfiction topic than write a book on a nonfiction topic. But the books are what you really need first to make the YouTube video. So, because you need an exhaustive review, or as exhaustive as a human being is capable of producing, review of a subject, and then someone else distilling that. Yeah. So I changed my mind while I was thinking through that. Ignore any of that. The last like 2 minutes of me having an argument with myself inside my brain, and then trying to explain outside of my mouth what was going on between the Kevins inside there. Another thing I thought about is like writing a novel is like a really stupid idea. Like what I am doing is not smart. If you have followed any of the countless amounts of research that's been coming out about literacy rates, about reading comprehension, about reading for recreation, about men reading fiction. It's all bad. It's all grim. It's all like, this is the worst. That's the worst. And this thing right over here is also the worst. It's like at every angle imaginable surrounding the idea of writing a fiction novel in 2026 would lead you to a really clear conclusion that it was an irrational choice. It is not a good idea. Here's the thing, though. That's kind of why it's interesting to me. And this might be some kind of disagreeableness, like personality dysfunction that I have. However, and these two things aren't comparable at all, because we're going to compare a burgeoning medium with a death rattling medium. But this is when I started doing, this is why part of the reason I started doing YouTube. There are other reasons I started doing YouTube, but part of the reason that I was doing it full time for no money for years, and also, largely being mocked for it, is it was stupid. Like, it was weird. It didn't make any sense. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you making these videos for an internet website for, I don't know, 100 people to watch, probably half of which are friends and family, and then the other half are like people who accidentally clicked on a thing? This is not a good use of your time. Obviously, it ended up working out for me, and it ended up being a good use of my time. Is this the same situation? No, because of what I said before. Like, doing YouTube full time in 2006 or whatever By 2010, it was a new ball game. Writing a novel in 2026, by 2030, likely going to be an even worse ball game than is being played right now, which is a very desolate, grim ball game. Very, very niche. Not a lot of people in the stands to paying, buying a ticket to sit in the stands of this ball game. Going to concessions, getting a hot dog and a beer. Not a lot of people there. But I like the challenge of, okay, I'll also say this. When I first started doing YouTube, one of the other reasons I really wanted to do it is because there were videos that I wanted to watch that I couldn't unless I made them. So I think this is a pretty common feeling phenomenon when it comes to creative endeavors, where for a lot of people, the reason that they end up making a thing is because they want the thing to exist and no one else seems to be making it. So it's like, well, I guess I will make it because I want to have this thing. It's like I really want peanut butter cupcakes, but no one seems to be making peanut butter cupcakes the way that I would like them to be made. So I guess I will make my own peanut butter cupcakes the way in which I envision them. And then, of course, I will eat them. And then they will be, hopefully, delicious. Well, I mean, if you've been listening to this podcast for the last year, for sure, maybe two, certainly the last year, there's been a lot of complaining about storytelling. There has been a lot of lamenting over being bored, being really, I don't know, dismayed, disgruntled, checked out, disinterested in a lot of like story-based media. So it ends up being another scenario where it's like, I have to make the peanut butter cupcake because no one is making the peanut butter cupcake that I want. I wish that they were making them. I would just, or, it's several different previously, hitherto unknown varieties of peanut butter cupcakes. And I could just be a glutton and consume them. But, it's like just kale chips, just like an endless, they have those like sushi bars with the conveyor belt and the little plates come around and you get to pick one. It's like that, but it's all just kale chips. Like kale chips are okay. They're okay. But I'm not like sitting down to a conveyor belt kale chip buffet ever. And no one else is either. That's why they don't exist. So, okay, I have to go back to writing the chapters because I got sidetracked. Here's how I do my chapters. So, like I said, I already have an outline, so I know what I want to happen. This needs to occur. This is the next idea. Here's the next piece of the automobile that needs to be put in to build my car. Before I start writing that, what I will do though is I have a notebook and I take my notebook and I get it off of the computer and I go to the other side of my office and I sit down with my notebook and I write a more detailed outline of just that chapter. because the outline that existed before will just be like 3 sentences of like, this happens, this happens, this happens. Okay, that's not enough. That's not enough. So I'll sit down in the notebook and I'll write a more detailed bullet pointed list of like, okay, this happens first, which leads to this, which leads to that. The other thing that I forgot to mention that is really important about I'll just say good writing. I didn't want to say good writing, but I think you could like safely I think you could safely say this is kind of the bare minimum of good writing, is that you have therefore, but instead of and then. Matt Stone and Trey Parker years ago, this thing was put up on YouTube where they went to NYU film school or something like that. They did some lecture. I think it was at a college. It's like a 2-minute video where Trey Parker is explaining like most people when they think of how a story goes, they think, you know, Gandalf shows up to the Shire and then, you know, Frodo says hi, and then Gandalf tells him about this ring, and then they would say, and then. He's like, that is not how you write a story. That might be how most people would describe it later, but that's like a garbage way of writing, because it's not like what would you say? Because the actions aren't impacted or influenced by previous actions. Like the events are not impacted in a proper way, in a sequential way by each other, which is why you say therefore, but instead. So this happens, therefore that happens, but that happens, therefore this happens. Like that's how you want to write. When I'm doing an outline, I guess I could add that as part of the process, but it takes forever to come up with those for me. That's like the hard part. This is where the story stump comes in. It's like, I don't know what the therefore buts are. Like the therefore buts, the magic is in the therefore buts. That's where like all the gold is. You're mining and mining and mining and mining, and eventually there's this big therefore but gold nugget. Jen says cause and effect. Thank you, Jen, for being my Jiminy Cricket. So Jenemy Cricket has chimed in with the phrase I was looking for, which is cause and effect. Good storytelling has cause and effect, not and then. If you read a crappy book, there are a lot of different, or watch a crappy movie, there are a lot of ways that things can be crappy. This is definitely one of them, especially when you see, I have read some indie authors who are like and then merchants, and it's not fun. It's not interesting. It's not exciting. There are not payoffs. You know, one of the things you also want to have are promises and payoffs. They have like none of those really, like, because it's hard. Like it's hard to come up with a good promise and a good payoff. It's hard to write a whole chapter of good, therefore buts, good cause and effect. Jen says somehow Palpatine has returned. Somehow, yeah. Whoopity doo. We need this to happen in the story now. There's a lot of this. A lot of is it called plot armor? Is that what plot armor is? Where like a thing, like they just need a thing to happen for the plot to progress, so it just happens. And it's not motivated at all. What you really want is for actions and events to be motivated in some way, to have some sort of the effect was caused by something. Anyway, so when I'm doing the chapter, I have the general, I need this to happen, get off the computer, go to my notebook, start writing, okay, some therefore buts, because that's really the meat. So this is going to get into my like human physiology analogy, human anatomy analogy. The outline, bones. To me, those are your bones, baby. Like, yeah, I'm being correct on what plot armor is. Okay, plot armor is where a character survives because the story needs them to, not because they earned their survival. Okay, so plot armor is like a really specific example of what I'm talking about, which is just unmotivated. You know, the writer needs the thing to happen, so it just happens. I'm sure there's a term for that too. I don't know. You can tell that I'm like good with concepts and not terms. Anyway, outline, that's the bones. Then the sort of like the therefore buts, the causes and effects, you know, those are your tendons. Okay, so you got your bones, then you got some tendons. Okay, then your pantsing starts. So then at some point you just actually have to write the thing. You're no longer thinking about what happens. Now the things just start happening. So you were describing a scenario, you're describing the setting, you're describing characters, dialogue is occurring. You know, that's your meat. Now you're getting into meat. So you have your outline bones, you have your like detailed outline, therefore butts, tendons. You start just writing meat. Okay. To me, my first pass on a chapter is meat. I want to get down all of that, well, up to the meat, because obviously you have to have the bones and the tendons. Is any of this making sense? This is how I think. So, if you're listening to this podcast, that's kind of the point, is to see how I'm thinking. This is how I think about this stuff. Okay. So you have the bones, you have the tendons, and now you're adding all the meat. You're writing meat. Do not think about skin. This is something that I had to learn the hard way with this first novel, is that I would get really frustrated during my first rough draft, my first pass, essentially, of a chapter, because I'd be overwhelmed by, you know, different descriptions or different actions. So, for instance, like, what are the characters doing when they're having this dialogue? Because you have this concept, I think it's called white room, where like white room, Jen, you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but like this is a pejorative. This is like a derogatory. This is bad writing. If someone says you're like a white room writer, that's not a good thing. And my understanding of white room writing is it's just people in a blank, it's like purgatory. They're just like in this blank room, have like arguing, you know, the like nothing, you're not living in a scene with real people. It's basically like heads in jars having a conversation. So when I am first writing that chapter initially, it's pretty much heads and jars. I gotta get those heads. I gotta get those heads and jars in place. It is it is white room writing, and I was getting frustrated because I knew it was bad, and I was getting bogged down on, well, what is this character doing, and like how do I make it seem more alive? How does this scene come alive? How does it go from heads and jars in a white room, um, like what is this is this character eating? What are they eating? Is this character like trying to paint a fence for some reason? I don't know, whatever it is. Like what's going on? What are they doing and why? I found that super hard. That's what I would call skin. To me, that's skin. All of those, like, making it an organic scene, making it an organic world details that are critical for making it not be a white room, that comes later. Like, that is something that I do ignore. I don't worry about it. Like, I'll have some ideas like, oh, maybe, this is happening, but like, I'm not going to, if I hyper focus on it, that's going to like really kill my progress. So it's much easier for me. It's like, oh, it's like painting a room. So you like have your primer, right? Well, you like fill all the nail holes with spackle, sand that down, then you prime it, and then you edge around the corners and the light sockets. Like there's a lot of stuff that happens in steps before you actually paint the room. I do think that, at least for me, writing is pretty similar, where it's like this is a process where I need some bones, then I need some tendons, then I need some meat, then finally I can attach the skin. And being like conscientious that those are different steps, really helpful. Like that is really helpful to understand, so that you don't get frustrated that like, this whole section has no skin. Like, oh my God, this is not any skin. This is no good. This is junk. This is garbage. What am I doing? This is horrible. Don't worry about the skin. Come back at the end and put some skin, and then adorn your body after that. Maybe that's like the last step is, you put on some clothes and some earrings and some tattoos and give it a haircut. make it make it pretty. But you can't make a skeleton pretty. You're not going to put eyeliner on the eye sockets of your skeleton. It wouldn't make any sense. Mike says, sounds like Kevin has painted a room or two. Yes, I have. That was one of I did painting professionally. Not really. But I did get paid to paint some houses a long time ago, before YouTube was invented. And I had many, many, many odd jobs. That was one of them. So yes, I know all about feathering, all of that stuff. So okay, that was all I had for this episode. I don't know how much more I have to write. I'm trying not to get discouraged by how much there is left, because I don't know how much is left. The other things that I have learned is that you have to go back and write things. So if you come up with, again, you don't have to do it this way. I am doing this way because I think this will be the best way to do it. We'll end up, creating the best product. If something happens, it's got to be set up earlier. They call that, foreshadowing is kind of like a really specific thing, I think. Maybe it's like low grade foreshadowing. And this I don't even mean this in regards to like a twist or something like that. There's not gonna be any plot twists in Sleep Warrior. But one thing I did learn I thought was really interesting in the Sanderson thing is like he was like a good plot in order to have a good plot twist, a a portion of the audience has to guess it. I don't recall whether or not he said like what rough percentage, if it's like 5% or 15%. It shouldn't be, I don't think it should be 50% because then that's not really even a twist if a lot of people know it's coming. But the point is, if it's just out of nowhere for everyone, it's not satisfying. Like that's not well crafted. That's not a well crafted plot twist. A well crafted plot twist requires a portion of the audience to guess it because then you know that uh, there was groundwork laid for that twist to occur. Then when the twist happens, you go, oh, like that. And unless there is that groundwork, I don't think the reaction is, oh, I think the reaction is, okay. I think that's probably is okay. It just seems random, I would think, uh, unless the dots are sort of connected, even if it's subconsciously. You didn't know those dots were there, and now all of a sudden, bam, subconscious dots have been connected and woven together, and your mind is blown. So I was hoping to have this first draft of the manuscript done by the end of last year. That's not happening at all. I'm on chapter 20 now. It will probably be no less than 30 chapters. But that was the other thing I was going to mention is there have been now 2 times where I've realized I have to add a chapter before where I'm at right now. I'm like, here's where I'm at. I'm at chapter 20 and I'm, moving and plowing ahead and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I need this to happen. And in order for that to resonate and be satisfying, I have to add something like 5 chapters ago. And it might not be like a little thing. It might be like a full-on chapter about a thing that later becomes this payoff over here. So I hope that illustrates a little bit of what my like puzzle analogy means, where it's like there are all of these pieces and how do they come together to paint a beautiful picture that you then hang on your wall and you invite friends over to look at my beautiful picture. Don't you like it? Isn't it pretty? Can you believe how many interlocking perfectly placed pieces there are? And they say, wow, yes, I love it. So anyway, guys, hopefully Matt will be back next week. Um, you know, send him all of your best get well soon cards. And until then, we will see you, Space Cowboys.